Hi and welcome to part 3.2 of the Global Challenges and Opportunities series. Today we're going to talk about how to go about resolving these issues that we find faced with the chronic fiscal imbalance. But before that, I'm going to get into much more detail to explain the issues at a more minute level. I introduced some terms such as capitalism in the last session, but today I'm just going to elaborate on that before ending with the solutions. Now, capitalism essentially is a system designed to favor the rich at the expense of the time of the working class. So as you can see in the diagram, this is quite a famous illustration of capitalism, that the working class, we feed all, and then we eat for you, and then we shoot at you, so then it's the military, and then we fool you, then it's the religious groups, and then we rule you, which is a monarchy, and then that's all dictated through money. And this in essence is how capitalism works. And like I mentioned, the superpower at the time on the globe superimposes itself on the rest of the globe. So for instance, in the day and age that we live in, United States is undisputably the superpower in terms of a nation, and it is a capitalist state, and that resonates throughout the pyramid structure. We feel that throughout the globe to some shape and form. And the issue with the capitalist system is that although you get growth, you get polarization at the same time. And although the notion is given that it is a system based on equality, it's actually a very unjust system. For instance, in the United States, in the hospitals, one of my father's friends who used to work there mentioned that the doctors, being on extortionate salaries, would get free lunch, whilst the nurses who were not on anywhere near close to the salaries that the doctors were on would have to pay for their lunch. And so it's a completely unjust system. Moreover, I give the example of Edison and his light bulb when JP Morgan he funded it and superimposed that onto the globe, that technology of the light bulbs, because it could be argued that he wanted to prove his father wrong, whereas when Tesla went to him regarding free energy, he turned that down because he said, what's in it for me? And the key difference essentially is, you could not say, well, we could say education, but it's got to do with, I guess, ethics and morals and values, different value sets. But having said that, what we have to realize is that although United States is a capitalist state, people within the US are not essentially capitalistic in mindset. Not all of them. I mean, you have great initiatives taking place. You've got something. There's something amazing about entrepreneurial nations such as the United States, and so credit where it's due. You know, you've got people like Elon Musk with his Tesla Motors with renewable energy and his solar city. You've got these serial entrepreneurs challenging monopolies with research and enterprise. You've got off-grid systems which are coming with social empowerment in mind, allowing people to take energy into their own hands. You've got bioeconomy movements, great visions and initiatives. Also things like methanol economy, hydrogen economy, solar electric economies coming through. You've got peer lending schemes, social empowerment again by bypassing the banking system and taking money into into their own hands. And functional medicine coming through in the healthcare field. So you've got a lot of exciting things coming through also, because at the end of the day, every blessing is also a curse, and a curse can also be a blessing. For instance, inbreeding. You know, although inbreeding is said to increase IQ levels, it can lead to mutation diseases. Okay, and same with capitalism. Although you end up with an advanced society, but masses end up being oppressed, you get extreme polarized. You get an extremely polarized society, and often it leads to a revolt. Although the generation might feel that they are oppressed, the thing is they have also had access to this wonderful technology, which you cannot, which we have to acknowledge. You cannot ignore this. And so this has enabled everyone to acquire knowledge, and the competitive advantage isn't as great anymore. There's a saturation of knowledge and technology. How you use that knowledge is a different matter and a different question. And the times that we live in, very interestingly enough, are very similar to that of ancient times, the ancient civilizations. In the ancient Egyptian civilization, again, it was a system based on capitalism. You had polarized wealth, you had unequal opportunity, you had an advanced civilization, used to control people with whips and fears and induce fear in people, and basically you had knowledge saturation. It was a very advanced civilization. The knowledge was abundant. Stories were the thing of the day, and hieroglyphics were used. Why? Because visuals are the most powerful things to retain information. Not reading words, it's visuals that are the most easiest to absorb data and information. And so you had this in the ancient Egyptian civilization, but again we have this in the modern day civilization in the form of infographics. But again, we've got capitalism, we've got polarized wealth again, we've got unequal opportunity. As much as there is this thing about equality that we keep hearing, the reality is it's still very unequal. There is a pyramid scheme in place with the US on top, then the OPEC countries and non-OPEC countries, and the control is through money and fear. There is knowledge saturation once again. You've got everything at access a click of a button. You just Google it. Professor Google will give you answers in a matter of seconds, and it actually even tells you how many seconds it's giving you the answer, and that's how beautiful the day and age we live in. And again, it's a day and age of stories. Instagram, Snapchats. What's the story of the day? It's about storytelling. Um, Everything is the stories that you hear in the marketing sector, in the sales and marketing. And so although we believe we have this concept of that we're living into modern advanced day and age, it goes to question, it goes to question what makes us think that we're in these advanced that we're in advanced civilization, when in actual fact there's more evidence that we're actually in ancient times. Again, there's evidence. I showed this diagram, but less updated one. This is a more updated one from 2016. The wealth, 85.6% of the wealth is possessed by 8.2% of the people, and so it's extremely polarized. And again, you see that a lot of the wealth that is in existence is actually tied up into corporations, transnational companies. And someone actually mentioned to me recently that corporations is actually something that means along the lines of corpse, so dead people, and oratory, talkings, dead people talking. So they're just dead entities talking to each other. And so dead entities mean that they don't have any sense of blessing, responsibility, or accountability. And so therefore they're like zombies. You can do whatever you want with them. You can use them for whatever means you want. And this seems to be largely the case. This seems to be largely the case, to the extent that countries now, when compared to emerging market countries, US companies The corporations in the US are worth much more than even countries. So, for instance, you've got Intel, which is worth much more than Russia. You've got Johnson and Johnson, worth almost as much as South Africa. You know, you've got General Electrics, which is worth more than Brazil, the capital of which is worth more than Brazil, and then Netflix, you know, which is worth equivalent of Chile, and Goodyear worth more than Morocco. And how do you end up with a world whereby dead entities, non-living beings, end up worth much more than land masses which have inhabitants living in it? Is beyond something I can comprehend. It is something that needs to be pondered, and we need to work out how you can get things back in order, because the reality is, even if people believe in the notion that okay, we've made progress and we are making progress, the reality is 1% of the global population are still starving, 13% still have access to no clean water, 17% are unable to read and write, 23% do not have a shelter, 48% live on less than $2 a day. And then this is known to be an age of equality and liberation and rights and freedom and all these empty slogans that we've thrown at, that are thrown at us. And so there's a lot of ground that needs to be covered, but I do not believe, and this is my opinion, I do not believe that it can be covered based on the existing systems and infrastructures, because polarization seems to be increasing. That, coupled with the fact that you've got 430 people, 430 million people unemployed, and the unemployment rate is nothing but increasing thanks to the technology. Technology means that you don't need as much manpower. If you don't need as much manpower, you're getting redundancies. Those that are being made redundant haven't got anywhere to go, because the largest sector on the planet at the moment, which is the most productive sector also, is the services sector. Services sector employs technology and IT infrastructure, and the whole point of IT is to outclass the human capabilities. And so it's a zero sums game. It's a zero sums game. So the only way is to increase things such as a bioeconomy, and so you can create jobs in the agriculture sector, because other than that, you're just going to have unemployment increasing. When unemployment increases, then you get a higher crime rate, and because people justify crime, because when they don't have food on the table, they'll justify anything for an easy buck. This is something I explained in the previous sessions. But I also explain that capitalism in and of itself, although there is a tendency to give it a negative connotation, there is there is an argument for capitalism based on meritocracy as opposed to monetary. So basically, capitalism based on money, as was shown in the diagram to you at the beginning, what happens is it's based on money, loans, paychecks, and management, which leads to oppression. So what essentially happens is this: the cycle actually starts off with a series of poor teachers. Poor teachers lead to poor students, which lead to more poor teachers. Okay, the society degrades, which leads to corruption. You've got poor puppet leaders in charge, okay, who want to serve themselves. And then the wealth distribution is extremely polarized. There's a high level of social stress. The highest earners are entertainers, okay, because entertainment becomes the order of the day. because to distract yourself from addressing the actual problem, so taking an ostrich approach, you just want to dig your head in the sand at the end of the day, and you just want to be distracted and you resort to entertainment. You don't want to face the challenges head on, and then you end up with false dreams and aspirations sold via the media, where you have kids wanting to become these footballers, wanting an easy way of making a lot of money, wanting to become these celebrities and stars, quick and easy way of making money. And so this is capitalism based on monetary. So based on a monetary system which is based on money, loans, paychecks, and management. Okay, you can similarly imitate this, and you could do a similar thing based on freedom. And this is how it used to be from the 19th till the 16th or 17th century. Some people argue till the beginnings of the Industrial Revolution, and these notions of what would be described as the prerequisites to this notion of corporations and corporatocracy. So when things were based on merit, meritocracy, merit, love, passion, leadership, that ended up in freedom. What was the difference? The difference is you had good teachers, which produced good students. Teachers who did not run after money and paychecks. Teachers who focused on merit, love, and passion and leadership. Okay, that led to good students. Those students went on to become even better teachers. So you had more good teachers. That enables society to grow. The children grow, and that leads to achievement. It leads to sacrifice. It leads to sincerity. And then that's what produces genuine leaders. Leaders that serve others, that aren't in it for themselves, only in it for themselves. And then that the wealth is fairly distributed, not equal, but in a just manner, through justice. There's a high level of social tolerance. That's where you do not get extremism and polarized views. There's tolerance amongst each individual, whether it's religious tolerance, whether it's academic tolerance. You do not get illnesses such as founder's disease, curse of knowledge, and imposter syndrome. They do not exist. The level of high self-esteem is apparent. You see that. The highest earners are teachers, the knowledge bearers, they're not entertainers. Real personal dreams and aspirations. The students have realistic goals and dreams and aspirations. They want to be an asset for humanity, they want to add value to society. And this is what a meritocracy-based capitalist system should and can look like. So capitalism in and of itself, the notion of growth, if that's what you want to label capitalism as, that can be accepted, but not the capitalism that we are experiencing, and that has been experienced in the recent history, and that is an imitation of the oppressive system that existed in the ancient times. That is not acceptable. Let me give you an example. My grandfather in the 1970s, when he went to do his PhD and came back, his one person's salary was enough to cover 16 people. His parents, okay, which lived with him, his wife and 4 children, so that's 2, and then that's 5, that's 7 people, and then there were 9 people. So his sister, who had been made a widow, her husband had passed away, and her children included, so 16 people overall. One person's salary in the 1970s was enough to cover. And then as time went on, a decade later, as the children grew up, and my grandfather's salary was basically, and he didn't need that responsibility anymore to fulfill that responsibility as the children had grown up, although he did still support her. but that salary was essentially only enough to cover his parents, to support his parents and his wife and children. So it dropped. It dropped from 16 to 7 people. As time went on, coming to the 1990s, again, one man's salary was just enough to cover his wife and children. Okay, moving on to 2000s, this is when I talk about my own father. And so at 1990, my grandfather retired, but I talk about my own father. My father, even in 1990s when he was working, his salary was enough. We were living a very good, decent lifestyle. But after 9/11 and after the economic collapses, he would have to take up extra work to make ends meet. And that was him just supporting me, my sister, and my mum. And so after 2000, after the millennium, an average person would have to do 2 jobs. Okay, if that wasn't the case, at present you have the man working and the woman working, to support their children. That is the trend that we see. Not only that, in a lot of households that I know, not only is the man working and the woman working, the man's working twice, doing 2 jobs. Okay, a full-time job and a part-time job, as is in my father's case at the moment, and also the woman has to work. Although my mum doesn't work, the point is that it would be either one of these scenarios at present, either one and one job, either a man's doing 2 jobs, or a woman's doing 1 job and a man's doing 1 job, or even a man's having to do to the extent of 2 jobs and a woman's having to do one job to support the children and make the ends meet. And the future is the man will have to be doing 2 jobs and the woman will have to be doing 2 jobs. And the bottom line is, when will you have time for your children? And this is why I've written, coming soon to a home near you, complete social breakdown. Because the reality is your actual assets are your children. When the parents are too busy working and the children are neglected, then the children will adopt whatever approach and means you lead them to. What they will see and perceive through the TV, television, they will imitate. What they see through the media, they will want to become. And what goes around comes around. When you neglect them in their childhood upbringing, once you become elderly and you need support, they won't be there for you because you weren't there for them. And so this is something that really needs pondering over. It is better to reduce your quality of lifestyle and live a simpler life than to compromise on your actual core responsibilities, that you will be held accountable for. And future generations are something that so whether you believe in a creator and accountability and day of judgment, etc., these concepts, whether you believe in that or whether you believe accountability to the future generations, your kids and their future kids and your grandchildren, regardless, you are accountable. Okay, so this is something that needs to be reflected upon, and because this is the trajectory that is in place. Okay, so we need to now question, how did all this come about? Now, when we look at the minimum wage, it's quite interesting because as time's gone on, so from 1938, the actual value of the worth of the wage was basically 16 times greater in 1938. Then in 1968 it was 7 times greater, whereas now we're at 1 to 1. So actually, sorry, in 2012 we were at 1 to 1. So what the wages is what it's worth. And so what that actually means is that there's been a decline in the valuation of the actual money. And so, as this graph illustrates, since 1968, the real value of the minimum wage has dropped 24%. Okay, so the actual worth is going to be even less than what it actually is or was projected to be. There's been decline in purchasing power of the dollar. Okay, so like I mentioned, the dollar is the sort of leading currency, and when the dollar has been impacted, that resonates throughout the structure of the globe. And so if the dollar is experiencing a decline, the rest of the currencies will also experience a decline. And so you can see from this graph that the dollar has witnessed a sharp decline up till 1985 approximately, and even now it's declining. And again, the incredible shrinking dollar is down 95% since the beginning of the 20th century. And so, as it's written, when dollars only buy 5% of what they used to, even having $1 million hardly counts as rich anymore. So the main issue is that we've got continuous increasing inflation. Okay, so things are getting much more expensive. That, coupled with wages not increasing as much, that's coupled with the fact that because things are getting much more expensive, we're giving much more, we're earning much less, we have fewer savings, not as much disposable income, and that, on top of all that, we have a decline in the value of the money that we have. That is the root cause of why people are having to work more for the same or less money. I hope that makes sense, because it's something worth pondering over, and it's something worth reflecting and trying to to grasp these concepts and get a grip of these, because it's vital in the time that we find ourselves in. Because the amount of debt that people are in is extortionate throughout the globe, whether it's at national level, whether it's at a domestic level, whether it's at an individual level. And you can only solve that issue or that challenge once you understand it. And this is partially the reason why I'm doing this series, to raise the awareness. And so, once you've understood the basics of what's happening, then only then can you address them. Now, having a declining dollar and the demonetization of things, that may not be something that you could probably, it's not in your hands directly. However, trying to earn more, spend less, and invest the savings is in your hands. Using your money wisely, downgrading your lifestyle if you need to, living a much simpler life if you need to, that's in your hands. Not going for extravagance, that's in your hands. Only when you can and once you can. Once you're financially free, then it's fine for you to indulge in whatever you want to, as long as it's done in a controlled manner. Then also, because there's a lot of millionaires that end up getting broke, struggle coming back. And so it's not about the money, it's more about the mindset. The other thing that I would like to share with you is that although you have systems that are in place. Like it's something like Henry Ford mentioned. Henry Ford mentioned that it's just as well people did not know the reality of the monetary system, because if they were to know, then there would be a revolution before tomorrow morning. Said something along these lines. And the whole purpose of me sharing this with you is not so much so to have a revolution in the form of a bloodshed, but to have a revolution in the form of using your mind and using your senses and your high faculties such as your wisdom to create solutions, positive solutions, whether it's peer-to-peer banking systems, whether it's alternative monetary systems, um, because now that you have the awareness of what's going on, can you address this issue appropriately? So I've so far explained to you the decline in the monetary system, the decline in um, you can say values, leading to such systems firstly being implemented, then executed, to find ourselves in a global situation that we find ourselves in. Um, but the key thing is, it goes much deeper than that. It goes much deeper than that. This is something I mentioned. This is something I mentioned whereby my father and my supervisor in academia were promoted, and they had to take a salary cut in order for the promotion. And how does that work? That works by basically giving a manager a budget and setting him or her some goals and tasks, a to-do list. Morals and ethics go out the window. It's much more mechanical then, and it's an activity in maximizing profits and returns for your own benefit. So for instance, you have certain demand of patients or students for doctors and teachers, and they put a manager on top in place, and for the doctors and anyone under the pyramid, they want to go higher up the ladder. And so in order to go higher up the ladder, the only way they can do that is if they follow the commands of the manager. And the manager is there nothing but to serve him or herself, and they are promoted upon maximizing profits, resources. The difference between a manager and a leader is a leader serves the people, is promoted upon social achievement, whilst the manager is promoted upon, like I mentioned, maximizing profits, but more so, it's a much more of a selfish mindset. So the example that I've given here is with the more supply or a demand in teachers, and sorry, with the greater demand in patients and students, there's a greater need of supply of doctors and teachers. And so in order to get more in the given budget, you have to reduce the salaries of those below you, and anything that you make on top, you take as a bonus. And so the manager's salary goes up for diluting the structure. That's what I would like to describe it as, the salary structure. And so you can get more for less. And so the managers managed to hire new personnel to meet the increasing demand, and also save £20,000, therefore will get a greater salary or a bonus. This is done at the expense of the doctors and teachers having to work more for less. Okay. Now, MBAs. This is where I would like to have a go at MBA programs, because MBA is what? Managing Business Administrations. I think that's what it's called. MBAs are taught nothing but to maximize profits. This is what they're taught. And they end up going in the big three, as I like to call them, into the banking institutions, the industries, and the government sectors. The whole role of an MBA is to serve a corporate, to help an entity which is based on maximizing profits to maximize even more profits. This is what the whole syllabus is about. And these three together, I believe the banking system, the industries, and governments are what working hand in hand are what are responsible for the decline that we find humanity to be in the last century or so. But and so you have MBAs like these, dressed up as well. This is the image of a corporate professional layout. This is what you have, and the problem is the individual's program to maximize profits. And that's why it's called an MBA program, managing business administration program. It's a program to program individuals to maximize profits. They have vested interests, and they end up as poor leaders and poor managers. Actually, poor leaders therefore managers, because in terms of managerial ability they have immense managerial ability, but they end up as poor leaders. So I'd actually rectify that statement. But the point in the question is that all banking institutes and those within them and all those industries and all governments and all those within them, are they all evil and are they all bad? And the answer to that is quite simple, and that is no. Should we boycott them? The answer is no. Because these institutes are fundamental institutes that are vital for society. So the solution is the growth of enterprises and genuine professional states where people aim to serve society working in industry. Okay, so we need good people to infiltrate and penetrate into these big three. People who have much more of a social inclination. So you have this. I mean, you see this. You see Jeremy Corbyn, for example, in Labour, who's doing this. You see Imran Khan with PTI. And I don't like to discuss politics, but I'm giving you examples of people that are socially inclined. That's the difference. Socially inclined personnel. And because at the end of the day, what is a bank? A bank is an institution for receiving, lending, exchanging, and safeguarding money, and in some cases issuing notes and transacting other financial business. That's all what a bank is. So people involved in that cannot be deemed to be evil people or bad people. It's the fact that it's based on interest and it's not tangibly backed by the goal that which is said to be. And you've got an interest-based system which is oppressive. That's what makes these institutions lack the robustness that they should be at. And industries, again, is the aggregate of manufacturing or technically productive enterprises in a particular field, often named after its principal product. Again, industries in and of themselves are not bad institutions. But it's when you have individuals who keep maximizing the profits so that it remains as capital tied up amongst few individuals, and that money is not being filtered down to social causes, and social causes based on empowerment and freedom, based on merit. That's where the issues arise. And even governments, so even amongst governments, the governments are just the political direction and control exercised over the actions of the members, citizens, or inhabitants of communities, societies, and states. Direction of the affairs of a state or a community. And so, to have some sort of control is deemed necessary, otherwise, you just have anarchy. But to have governments to control minds, that's where it's an issue, because people should have the rights to control, there should be some governance, but not essentially governments. So govern is to control, ments actually stands for minds. People should be allowed to be able to exercise their own faculty, the higher faculty that they have of their mind. and the boundaries should be established by some form of governance. That's the way it should be. But anyway, that's these are institutions that exist, but I do not believe and deem them to be the solution, the overall arching solution, because I believe that to be social entrepreneurship, which I will come on to. The other problem, other than MBAs, so I've discussed MBAs, I've discussed managers versus leadership, I've discussed the minimum wage and the declining dollar, um, the bogus currencies, monetary systems that are in place. I've discussed how the systems used to be and how corporations are worth more than people. Here's another interesting thing. Why was Silicon Valley created? So everyone is focused towards a pyramid, and the roads lead to Silicon Valley for the professionals. Your best talents are there. So the point of Silicon Valley was to bring the most creative, innovative, talented minds and driven personalities, people that have a high energy, to drive global inventions and polarize the global wealth. Evidence: 0 to 1, Peter Thiel and Elon Musk were on the verge of busting the global economy with the Zip to PayPal venture, um, before they basically merged it to PayPal, before they combined. If they were to do it independently, they would have busted the global economy. That's how delicate these matters are. This is how much things are polarized in Silicon Valley. Uber and Airbnb, again, these global trends. Other than IPO, only possible to attain enough funds to grow business through private investors, and all your private investors are where? Silicon Valley. So Silicon Valley is this thing. So what I've created is a roadmap to start and to go from an idea to conceptualizing a business, to grow it, to sustain it. The beauty of Silicon Valley is that everything is already there. All you have to do is, as an entrepreneur, is go there. Right? As an entrepreneur, so Steve Jobs, Mark Zuckerberg, Elon Musk only have to do an idea and proof of concept. That is the toughest thing that they have to do, relatively compared to other entrepreneurs. Other entrepreneurs in other parts of the world will have to also find their investors. They'll also have to do the media, sales, and marketing. They'll have to grow it and sustain it. But in Silicon Valley, you have the investors hovering around because it's established due to its entrepreneurship culture. The sales, marketing, and the media presence is already there. Already, you've got a mass media global coverage established due to entrepreneurial culture for IPO. Okay, so your toughest essential job to begin with is just to come up with an amazing idea and get to the proof of concept stage. Then your investors are already there. You don't have to go running around. Your media, sales, and marketing, your coverage is also already there. This isn't so much so for different entrepreneurs in different parts of the world. They also have to. So if you don't have incubators, etc., you'll have to go look for the investors yourself. You'll have to go and blow your own horn, do your own sales and marketing, and then eventually you use other people's money and other people's time to grow, and you use other people's money and other people's time to sustain. And this is the concept of Silicon Valley. Again, these things appear to be all by design. Why was the stock market created? So I once ventured out into options trading. I didn't actually get involved into it. It's something I went to study to see whether it's something I would be interested in doing. And the person who I went to was a guy called Sean Ellison, he's an Australian. He has 18 years experience and worked under the founder of the Wall Street software. And he's a guy that made $80,000 in 30 minutes on a Google stock, right? And he came up with the conclusion to this, and he does options trading, and he's involved in the stock market, and they make you can make immense amounts of money from that sort of thing. But for me, it was against my morals and ethics, so that's why I did not pursue that. But anyway, I learned something incredible from him, and he mentioned that the whole purpose of the stock market was to transfer huge amounts of money from the financially non-educated to the educated. This is a zero-sum game. Some win and some will lose. This is what he said. He made us all write this down. And so, again, stock market I've covered. I've covered Silicon Valley. I've covered the banks, industries, and the governments. And what I've tried to, and lastly, I'm going to cover the military spending. Okay, there's a principle in life known as growth versus defense. The most, the more energy you utilize in defending, the less you have in growing. So, for instance, the United States spent 610 billion in defending, but that implies that they are scared of something that they needed to defend, but it also implies that that 610 billion taken away from something growing, something that could be used for growth, growing the education sector, right? Similarly with other countries like Saudi Arabia or India again, the poverty levels are sky high. So rather than spending 50 billion in defending, they could spend the 50 billion in growing by spending it in the education sector. And similarly with other countries there who are spending an extortionate amount of money in military. And as of 2010, I did some analysis in 2010 or 2013 around there, and you'll see that almost every country is under government debt. And this is an astonishing thing that I realized, that almost every country is under debt. And it made me question, who were they under debt to, or in debt to. And the conclusion was it was the IMF, International Monetary Fund. So to grow the country's infrastructure, you need the money. You can't get the money from anywhere else other than you have to take loans from the IMF, because your own country does not produce sufficient enough, or you need some loan. And you take a loan when you want to grow faster than what is organic. And that's the issue that you have, because then the loan comes with interest and repayments that you have to make, and you're sort of stuck. I was really happy to find out that recently Turkey has paid off its IMF loan. Oman has very little. Malaysia and Pakistan relatively little. Um, so Iran also relatively little. And so it says it's a good sign for countries coming from these places, and these are the places that you should look to establish things in, because with low debt and an increasing growth in your GDP means that you'll be much more prosperous much more quicker. And so I've put some stats here, and I've shared this with you for those of you that want to do some future planning or finances, and where you'd like to, take yourself and live your life. And because now the world is a global village, so like the series is global challenges and opportunities, just as though you've got challenges, you've got as many opportunities. It's about availing those opportunities. And so the overall solution that I would like to propose for the chronic fiscal imbalance is that we've got industries and banks that are now polarized, and society has shrunk. But the shrinking of society can be rebalanced. The public sector can be grown, but that can only be done through social enterprises, in my opinion. You need to draw money out of industry, corporations, and banks and circulate it back into society. It's akin to a reverse osmosis to create jobs. So reverse osmosis is a concept in biology, but you can create jobs, you can have cheaper food, healthcare, energy, and education. What is social enterprise and what sorts of projects? This will be something I will discuss in the next part of this series. Thank you for listening, and I love your feedback. Thank you.